Hello and welcome back to the KCC channel. I'm Rob and I hope you're having a wonderful day today. Today we're going to jump into some malicious compliance. Our first story comes to us from Zanfar. 6 feet out or 6 feet up? Let's jump right in. I was reminiscing with my family about my late grandfather and some of the tomfoolery he got up to. I thought this story made a perfect post for this sub. Backstory. Decades ago, my grandparents purchased a large plot of land out in the middle of nowhere with the idea to build themselves a home and retire on that plot. They were both from the rural Midwest, so they originally wanted to keep horses, chickens, and maybe a few other small farm animals on this land, hence the size. As the years went by and they started actually making plans, they realized that horses weren't really feasible for a variety of reasons. By that time, the area around their plot of land had been significantly more developed, so they instead split the plot into 8 pieces and sold the other 7, essentially financing their original purchase and the construction of the house, leaving their retirement and pension untouched. Because of their incredibly advantageous position, they made a point to only sell to like-minded buyers, friendly retirees who were looking for their last home and wanted a bit of the same rural isolation that my grandparents wanted. The result is that my grandparents ended up with their dream bungalow on a spacious lot surrounded by friendly neighbors, and without any major time or money obligations, they ended up spending a lot of time volunteering and generally making friends with the community that was growing around them. The event. The area ended up becoming incorporated, and the town they were now living in eventually decided that the 2-lane blacktop road needed to be repaved and upgraded with sidewalks, gutters, and all the other amenities townspeople expect. Now, the county that the town was incorporated from had planned ahead, and there was plenty of room set aside for exactly this type of project, so none of the residents needed to move their fences or give up property to the state. However, most of them had placed their mailboxes on a post about a half-dozen feet from their property line, nearer the road so that the postman had easy access. When the construction started, a city representative visited each property on this street and gave them a heads up on what to expect, and also asked that the residents move their mailboxes to make room for construction. My grandfather, being of light schedule and helpful demeanor, offered to help his neighbors temporarily relocate their mailbox and post. He had retired from his career as a handyman, and several of his children owned landscaping or similar businesses. So he and my uncle spent a few hours with a mini backhoe and unearthed all 8 of his neighbors' mailbox posts, cement and all. He saved the post to reinstall when the road was complete and mounted the mailbox proper on each property's fence. The issue. Lo and behold, on Monday they had no mail service. After a bit of investigation, they realized none of their neighbors did either. So the next morning, my grandfather waited outside to see what the problem was. Right on time, the mailman drove down their side of the street, completely ignoring all 8 properties. Redoubling his efforts, the next morning my grandfather was able to flag the mailman down and ask what the problem was. According to my grandfather, the very curt response was, "I'm not required to deliver to any mailbox more than 36 inches from the edge of the road." A call to the Postal Service confirmed this rule. The mailman may deliver outside that limit if they want, but they are not required to. The compliance. Now, it's pretty amazing what you can get done with 8 business hours of free time. The problem was that 36 inches from the current edge of the road is in the way of construction. My grandfather spoke to the construction supervisor, who was sympathetic, but just as stuck as my grandfather was. My grandfather then visited the postal office and returned with a current copy of the regulations about mailbox locations. After a few hours of study and another visit to the construction supervisor's office with a half-dozen donuts and some coffee, he had formulated a plan. Remember his sons who ran landscaping businesses? My grandfather got in his truck and visited both businesses. He returned home with 8 20-gallon plant pots. These things were huge, 30 inches tall and just about as large around. You see, while the construction guys couldn't mess with a federally protected fixed mailbox, they were happy to move a pot out of their way in the morning, and back when the job was finished for the day, my grandma makes some pretty darn good donuts, which is a pretty easy task when you have earth-moving equipment nearby. So each post was replanted in a 20-gallon pot, and each mailbox was remounted on a post, and each pot was placed conservatively within 36 inches of the current road's edge. The kicker was that a mailbox post that is meant to stick 4 feet out of the ground has at least 2 feet buried in the ground. In other words, it's a 6-foot post. When you put that inside a pot with a few inches of soil underneath, and that pot on the surface of the ground, a mailbox on top is easily more than 6 feet in the air. You see, the mailbox codes clearly specify how far horizontally a mailbox needs to be from the road, but say nothing about how high that mailbox needs to be. It took a few more conversations with the postman and a visit from the local inspector, but the mailman spent the better part of 6 months delivering to 8 mailboxes 6 feet in the air rather than walk the extra 6 feet to the fence. Okay, so here I was trying to figure out what the pots were going to be used for before they mentioned that they were going to bury the posts in them. That was a wonderful idea that also kept me on the edge of my seat. Well done, OP. Do me a quick favor, have a look down below the video. If that subscribe button's still red, it means you're not actually subscribed to the KCC channel. Please hit that subscribe button for more daily Reddit stories. Our second story today comes to us from Synthron. Not giving me the files I need? Okay, I'll do as you wish. Let's jump right in. Dear Reddit, after lurking for a bit, I decided to share my own story of malicious compliance. English is not my first language, so bear with me. I worked at a company, let's just call it us, as a hardware engineer. Customers would contract us to design, redesign, repair, analyze, etc., their projects and modules and so on. One day, a big long-term customer, we'll call the company ABC, called and it went a bit something like this. Hello, us. We have a module which is not working. Can you analyze and fix it? Hello, ABC. Can you go into more detail? What exactly is not working? Is it hardware or software related? Note, us did both. It's not working. Well, yeah, but what is not working? It's not working. All right. Can we have the technical documents so we can start analyzing them? No can do, but here is the faulty module. How do you expect us working on the module without having a clue what it is supposed to do? You'll figure it out. Okay, so basically this went on for about a week. After that, we just said, okay. I asked my boss, since I was supposed to work on it, how I should go on with the task. My boss, crazy, lovely guy he was, just said, you heard them, we have to figure it out. So complete reverse engineering of the module and make sure you write down every single minute you work on it. Small side note for the non-tech savvy peeps here, a reverse engineering process is the long and tedious process of tracing every single copper trace on a board, basically starting with the finished product with the goal to redraw the schematics for it. Think of it like having a meal with 5 courses and in the process of eating, figuring out the exact steps the cook took to make it. So I did as my boss said. I re-engineered the whole module, drawing my own schematics for it, figuring out the inner workings, even taking a ROM dump, basically deassembling the machine code into readable source code and tracing down the workings of the software as well. This whole process took something like 4 to 5 months for me and 2 others just reverse engineering this darn expletives here module. After that, we finally started working on the errors and found out that there was a bug in the software causing the processor on the module to reboot like every 2 seconds. Huh. A bit of research showed that this module was part of an industrial controller system. Let's just say that if they put these modules anywhere in there, a lot of people would be without power. So after finding the error and fixing it by literally changing one line of code, writing the report and scheduling a meeting with the client, I got back to my boss, who was following my working hours really carefully for the project. It turned out there were a lot of work hours for that project. Through the grapevines, I heard that the total cost for the client was totaling well over $300,000. So the meeting began and we presented our findings, showing the whole process we did, including the reverse engineering. This time we spoke to different people as the ones who gave us the project. This time, the CEO of ABC was within the meeting too. At first he asked where we got the schematics, because they didn't look like they were made with their templates. We told them we weren't given the documents, so we had to re-engineer everything. Easy to say, the CEO was livid. He immediately asked who told us that we couldn't get the docs. We told him. He thanked us, made sure we were paid 10% more than we billed, and hung up. The fallout came to us via an email from the CEO himself. He apologized to us that we had the hassle of re-engineering. Also said that if ever we have trouble like this again, we are free to contact him directly. Also, the guy who said, "You figure it out," apparently got fired on the spot. Least to say that even if it was a lot of work, I really have to grin every time I remember this. This happened about 3 years ago, and since then, I quit the job to study to become a state certified technician. After that, I will happily go back to the company, since working there was a charm. Also, on a side note, after talking to the CEO of ABC and getting a few documents, we discovered that this software bug was over 9 years old in a safety first over anything else industrial controller system. Who would have thought? Yeah, I think all we'd say to the client in that case would be, well, billable hours are billable hours, and we had to figure out exactly what we needed to do, so that's kind of your fault. Moving on. Our next story today comes to us from Alk6379. If you don't like it, you can quit. Let's jump right in. In high school during the late 90s, I was a server at a pizza chain with a red roof. At the time, this place had dine-in service. We had a GM, Ray. Ray was a nice guy, but he was better on the business and financial side of the restaurant than managing employees. People generally got their work done, but in retrospect, everybody that worked under him was young, and we probably didn't give him the respect he was due. Eventually, Barb showed up. She was an assistant manager from a nearby store that closed. Barb wasn't like Ray. It was like she was hired to come in and crack a whip over all of us. Never a please or thank you for anything. Forget if you have time to lean, you have time to clean. If you have time to lean, you have time to clean out the walk-in fridge and rinse it from floor to ceiling. On Friday and Saturdays, the restaurant didn't close until 1 a.m. These were generally the busiest nights. However, I was 16 to 17 at the time and I walked to and from work. My parents said that under no circumstances did they want me working past 11 p.m. They didn't want me walking home after 1 a.m. and risking being hit by a drunk driver or some other idiot out at those hours. I had already been attacked by a homeless person one Friday night that year. This limitation was written into my file by Ray. We had several other teen servers with similar scheduling limitations, but it was usually okay. Things started dying down at 11, and the adult servers were happy to take the late tips themselves. One Friday, it's 9:45, and we're still swamped. Mean old Barb is managing, my tables are mostly wrapping up, so I informed Barb I need to come off the floor if she expected me to do any side work that night. She says to me that I need to keep serving and do my side work, and I can't leave until the side work is finished. I remind her that I must be out the door at 11 p.m. If I'm not, there's a high likelihood my parents will make me quit this job, especially after being attacked by that homeless person. It's just too busy. If I take more tables, there's no way I can do side work. Plus, I just have to hand off those tables to the adult servers anyways, so there's really no point in me taking more tables. Barb blows up at me. She starts screaming loud enough for customers to hear about how kids these days are all a bunch of babies, and how she hates that helicopter parents won't let their kids do real work anymore. After that tirade, she says, "You have work that needs to be done, you need to stay and do it, and I don't give a darn what time it is. If you don't like it, you can quit." For some reason, her saying that felt like a smack to the forehead. I don't like this job. There are plenty of other minimum wage jobs I could be doing that would work with my schedule limitations. I'm a teen, just doing this job for scratch money? Screw her. I reach into my server apron and move all my tips into my pants pocket. I untie the apron and place it on the front counter. Her eyes get huge, and all I remember coming from her was this screech of, "What? What are you doing?" I tell her I'm doing what she said. I don't like it, so I'm quitting. Cue more screeching. She's so loud the entire restaurant can hear her. At that point, I just turn around and walk out, letting the door of the restaurant close and muffle her screeching. I make it home before 11 p.m. Ray calls me the next day to get my side of the story. I explain everything. He says he understands, and he backs me up that she shouldn't have tried to make me stay. He asks if I could at least come in and work the Saturday dinner rush, but I told him I wouldn't set foot in that restaurant if Barb was there. He said that Barb was managing that night, so I chuckled and said, well, that's your problem. A week later, I get another phone call from Ray. Over the course of that week, Barb yelled at 2 other teen employees of the restaurant for similar reasons, causing one to quit. She apparently also nearly got into a fight with an adult server because she called that server a druggy bee and said she was going to slap the taste out of her mouth. Barb specifically called her that because she knew the server was in recovery for opioid addiction. The final nail in Barb's coffin? 2 customers called to complain that their carryout pizzas appeared to have cigarette ashes on them. Managers usually worked the register at this store, which meant they also cut and boxed to-go orders. Apparently on less busy nights, Barb would smoke while behind the counter. She was caught on video multiple times in one day with a cigarette hanging out of her mouth as she cuts the pizzas. Suffice it to say, Barb got fired. Ray was calling everyone back that quit to see if they wanted to come back. Me, I declined. I had already found a gravy gig working at an antique mall. I didn't make tips, but I made a better hourly rate, so the money was more consistent. Oh, to be a fly on the wall when that was happening. I'd love to say that I would start clapping, but in all reality, I'd probably be silent because I'd be so shocked by what was going on. Check out all 3 OPs linked in the description down below. Thanks for watching, have a wonderful day, and we'll see you tomorrow.